Welcome back to Alpine Garage Sports. We are going to be talking position rooms going forward. And in this particular video, we're going to talk about what I think is the most important position room this year, which is the running back room. We need a running back room, and here we go. All that and more on this episode of Alpine Garage Sports. All right, finally. For those of you who watched the show last year, you will know that the running back room is very near and dear to my heart. A, because I grew up in the generation, especially at Colorado, where we had the wishbone, and it was a run kind of scenario. We had running quarterbacks, and so I find the run to be the most fascinating part of the game, to be honest with you. And so from then on, I've always been kind of a running back guy. Now, in this particular case, last year, we proved to be terrible at the run. Obviously, I think everybody knows that. And it was born out of a lot of things. I mean, we were last in the country in our run game last year. 130 out of 130 at a 68.7 yards per game. And there's not going to be a team out there that's going to win very much when you can't have a good run game supporting the pass game. So we know that. And I wanted to go down a rabbit hole just a minute before we actually get to the 6 running backs that we have in the room. We're going to talk about a little bit about each one. But first, I want to kind of go through some, let's say, stats from last year so we can get an idea of where we need to be. So, you know, we were 130 out of 130. We, in our run game, our sacks, we got sacked more times than every single FBS school but one. So we were 129th. And a lot of that was born out of the fact that we didn't have a run game. I'm going to say it right now. I mean, we can call the line, you know, terrible from last year, and that's the reason why. But a lot of it was the fact that Shedeur had a pass on a lot of downs, and we couldn't trust the run. That we couldn't run block. When we did run block, we got behind, and we felt like we had to throw it because we want to put the ball in our playmaker's hands, and our playmaker is Shedeur. So in that case, Shedeur's not going to run a lot. We don't want him to run a lot. So therefore, we're just not going to run a lot. This year has to be different. And so I pulled some stats from last year. So 2023, the top 3 offenses in the country from a yardage standpoint were LSU, Oregon, and Oklahoma. Now that stated, all 3 of those had really good run games. LSU, 204.5. And Jaden Daniels was the number 2 quarterback in the draft, and they averaged over 200 yards. So it doesn't hurt anything to have a great run game, right? Oregon 185 and Oklahoma 182. So all 3 of the best offenses in the country all had great run games. They also had great passing games, obviously, right? So I think that could be our mix. Now, if you look at the playoff from last year, Washington had the lowest at 118.4. Everything was Michael Penix last year, but they were still double what we were, right? Texas was at a 188, Michigan at a 170, and Alabama at like 185. So when you're looking at the top teams in the country, you're talking, you need to be above 170, right? Or at least be in that range of the balance so that you can use the clock to your advantage instead of just giving the ball back to the opposing team every single time. It helps stress out defensive coordinators and play callers on the field on defense when they don't know run pass and you have a good running game and they got to press the box and, you know, all these things. It's the run game, and I think I'm preaching to the choir, but there are still a lot of people out there that say, you know, that we could win it on Shedeur's hand alone. And I'm telling you, I don't think that that's true. That's me personally. If we have a great running game, if they fear the run, then Shedeur is going to have the season of his life because he can pick anywhere he wants to if he can have that option. So I'm going to say it right now. We need to be able to rush between 140 and 170 yards per game average. That sounds like a lot, and it is a lot compared to last year. But in order for us to win the Big 12 title, I honestly feel like we have got to be in that 150, 160 yards per game. And we need to really give Shedeur the opportunity to pass without a lot of pressure. Time of possession. I can't say it enough. Time of possession. We got to have that time of possession. Now let's go down the running back list. So just recently in the Big 12 conference meetings, Coach Prime talked about Charlie Offerdahl is the number one running back and it's his to lose. And I find that to be awesome. I like that for a coach to stand up and say, you know, Charlie's earned it. Charlie's worked really hard for what he's got. He is now not a walk-on anymore. He's been a walk-on for the last 3 years. He's not a walk-on anymore. And he is our most senior running back from the standpoint of being on the team. So we're going to give it to him as the number one running back, and it's his to lose or someone else's to gain at that point. But we all know that Dallen Hayden is sitting in the wings, and Isaiah Agustave is hiding in the wings there, and Micah Welch is hiding in the wings, and Brandon Hood. And then we also have Christian Serem in there as well. So I thought I would break it down to when we start the season, where do I think the backs are going to be? And I can tell you right now, I love Charlie, and I think you guys know this. I'm a giant Charlie Offerdahl fan for a lot of reasons. One, in 2022 during the spring game, he really turned us all on to his grit and determination. And then he had a great season that year as a walk-on and really was one of the only inspirational things that happened in that season. Then Coach Prime came and either people jumped, left, ran, or set on fire, and we switched everybody out except for a good few handfuls of really good players, and one of those was Charlie. At this point, when I say it's hard for me to say that anybody can take that away from Charlie, Dallen Hayden has a lot of experience. He's got a lot of experience, and he's a great runner. Running at OSU over the last few years, 5'10", 203, so he's a big back. He has 663 career yards. He's a 5.8 yards per carry rusher, and if you look at the highlights there, 6 TDs. He has not been a very prolific pass catcher, 5 catches for 21 yards. But where I think that he sets himself apart from a lot of other running backs is that he's very decisive when he runs. So you don't see him standing in the backfield a lot. And some people may call that, you know, patience if you're going back and forth or waiting for a hole to open. And patience is good. There's nothing wrong with having patience as a running back. But Dallen seems to be very decisive. He knows where the hole's going to be. He trusts his blockers, and he follows his blockers. Now, Ohio State University had a great line, so he could trust his blockers pretty well. But then once he got past that level, he was a tough runner. It was hard to tackle him with his feet. You had to wrap up. He was fighting for every yard. And because of that quick and decisive and blast of speed, he's at 4 yards before you know it. So I think it's going to be hard to beat Dallen Hayden for the number one running back, although I would love for Charlie to be able to pull this off. My number 2 running back is Charlie Offerdahl, 5'11", 185 from here in Colorado. Colorado boy, been here, walk on for 3 years. He has 161 yards career, 4.1 yards per average carry, which doesn't sound like much, but last year he had 2 runs against Nebraska at 5.5 average. He actually, in practice, you can see he's running probably between 4.5 and 5.5 yards per carry average in practices last year specifically. And he's got 2 passes for 47 yards. It has all the heart. And he's another one of those guys that doesn't wait around a lot. Like, he's very decisive. He finds the hole, and before you know it, he's 3 to 4 yards in the backfield. So if you need a good hard 2 to 4 yards, Charlie Offerdahl gets it every single time. Very few times have I seen him bottled up behind the line, and that is because of his decisive nature. So I'm putting him at number 2. Now, I would say either tied for 2 or number 3 would probably be Isaiah Agustave. He's hard to predict, man. At 6'2", 6'3", depending on what you look at, 210 to 220 pounds, depending on what you look at. So we're going to go with 6'3", 220 pounds. Big stand-up runner, can't hardly tackle the dude. He fights with abandon, and he's fast. Like, this guy is fast. He's fast for a big guy. He can still juke, although he kind of seems like a more north and south runner. And I'm really excited to see what he can do in fall camp. This is the guy, one of the guys that could come up and take number 1. I mean, I think that there is a lot to be said for this guy. 4-star. He had 202 yards at Arkansas, 5.8 yards per carry. Again, very similar to Dallen. Only 3 for 7 on receiving. So again, still we don't have that, screen back that's coming to us. But we already have a lot of those. We have a lot of receivers that can play that role. Here's a fun stat. Junior and senior in high school, he averaged 8.7 and 9.8 yards per carry in high school. Now, granted, He's a big guy. Like, you basically have an edge holding the ball. You almost need to make him a striper or something like that. But he's going to be hard to bring down for high school kids. And he was. And so he had that. Now, obviously, he didn't have that in college. But dang, 5.8 yards per carry is pretty darn salty. I can tell you he's going to be a handful for defenses. So I'm really excited to see where he ends up landing. Now, my wild card for the group, I have him at number 4 is Micah Welch. Now, 4 and 5 being Micah Welch and Brandon Hood, I'm going to go ahead and divulge it because they're freshmen, and I'm not sure with the other backs that we have how much playing time they're going to get. But Micah's got something special here. So Micah, 3-star, number 59 running back in his class, 5'9", 205 pounds, so real short, compact, but stout, big legs. Hard to tackle him on his legs. We'll talk about that here in a minute. From Georgia, 4,223 all-purpose yards in high school. So he played lots of different positions. He was a prolific ball returner, which I think he'll be for us, actually, his freshman year. I think between him and Jimmy Horn, I think we're going to see them split on returns. And he made a splash coming in early to spring camp, showing how hard it is to tackle him. Really low, really thick. You got to wrap him up. He'll break right through a shoulder tackle. And I think probably the most famous one that he had was when he ran straight through Shiloh Sanders in that. And I mean, it's in tons and tons of shorts. And just showing his power and his determination and the fact that he's really hard to tackle. This could be a guy as a freshman that could actually end up with a ton of carries this year, especially if he does what he did in spring ball, in fall ball. I think that he might actually move up that chart quite a bit. And then you have Brandon Hood, 5'11", 190, 3-star, number 65 running back from Georgia also. He had a very prolific freshman year, but ended up with an ACL tear, so doesn't have a lot of stats after that, but there's a lot of buzz about Brandon. Obviously, he is here with his brother, and they are both looking to make a name for themselves here, and I think they will. And the fact that he was so good as a freshman in high school makes me think that he'll be a standout here as well. And you know, the one thing about Brandon that I noticed in his tape is that Brandon runs with abandon. And the reason why they say that is because he's all over the place, man. He makes 7 or 8 direction changes every time he touches the ball. Like, you don't know where he's going to end up. Where you have somebody like Isaiah who seems to like to run north-south a lot because he's big and he can run right over you. Brandon, he'll get to a defender and he doesn't mind contact, but he'll then make contact and then he'll change direction and everybody runs past him in the other direction. Then he'll make a direction cut again and then again and then again, just running back and forth, and it's kind of hard to get a beat on him. And so I see he's got a distinctly different running style than almost any other of these running backs. And then let's not forget Christian Serem. And the reason why I want to make sure that I make a note about Christian is because he is a walk-on here and has been for for a few years, and he has outlasted the other groups that have come in and out as well. He is 6'2", 210 pounds from Carlsbad, California. I think he's bigger than 210. We saw him in the spring game. He would be a great fullback if we were running that type of offense. He actually played edge in high school too, and he was a really good edge. He's obviously not afraid of contact. He loves contact, and I'm really looking forward to seeing if we can finally get him some reps because he hasn't had any in college so far. So anyway, that rounds it out. So 6 running backs. I think with this group right here, I think 140 is modest. I honestly think that one of these running backs is going to end up with over 5 yards per carry average at the University of Colorado, which in the past has been very hard to do. It's going to set Shedeur up for success. Now, he's not going to be hurried on his throws. The deep balls are going to be that much easier. He's going to be able to relax a little bit because he's not going to have so much pressure on him. So this is going to be a great thing. So thank you, Coach, for bringing in such great players. Thank you for every other coach in there for being there on the recruiting trail, bringing these folks in. It was a really tumultuous spring with people in and out. We lost some players that we didn't want to lose, but I think in the end we ended up with a very talented group that I think could get us that 150, 160 yards per game that I think we need in order to capture the Big 12 title. So put your comments down below. Let me know your order. Who do you think is the standout of the group? Who do you think is going to be the surprise of the group? And then let's battle it out in the comments. That is a wrap from Alpine Garage Sports. We will see you in the next video.